The cold was getting worse. Captain Nari pulled her thermal jacket tighter around her shoulders as she walked through the dark hallways of the Starweaver. The ship's lights had failed 3 hours ago. Now only the emergency strips glowed dimly along the floor, casting long shadows on the metal walls. She could hear her crew coughing in their quarters. The air was getting thin. Their breathing systems were failing one by one, just like everything else on the ship. First the engines had died, then the shields. Now even the basic life support was giving up. Nari reached the bridge and found Do-hyun hunched over his science station. Her second-in-command was still trying to fix something, even though they all knew it was hopeless. His breath made small clouds in the freezing air as he worked. "Any luck?" Nari asked, though she already knew the answer. Do-hyun looked up at her with tired eyes. "The power core is completely dead. Those Vorthak weapons didn't just damage our hull, they fried every major system we have." Nari nodded sadly. She had expected as much. The attack had come without warning. One moment they were scanning a beautiful nebula for scientific data. The next moment, 3 Vorthak raider ships were firing on them with everything they had. The Talians were explorers, not fighters. Their ship carried no weapons, only science equipment and research labs. They had tried to run, but the Vorthaks were faster. They had beaten the Starweaver until it was barely alive, then left it floating in space like a broken toy. "How long do we have?" Nari asked. Do-hyun checked his readings one more time. "Maybe 6 hours. 8 if we're lucky. The emergency batteries are almost empty." Behind them, Communications Officer Minho was listening to the long-range sensors. He turned around with a grim expression on his pale face. "Captain, I'm picking up those Vorthak ships again. They're about 12 hours away and coming back this way." Nari felt her heart sink. The Vorthaks were returning, probably to strip their ship for parts, or maybe to take prisoners. Everyone in the galaxy knew what happened to aliens who fell into Vorthak hands. The lucky ones died quickly. She looked around the bridge at her crew. These were good people. Scientists and explorers who had spent their lives trying to understand the universe. They had never hurt anyone. All they wanted was to learn about the stars and maybe find new friends among them. Now they were going to die alone in the cold darkness of space. "Captain," Minho said quietly, "we could send a distress signal." Do-hyun laughed bitterly. "What's the point? We're in the middle of Vorthak space. No merchant ships come through here anymore. The trade routes all go around this sector now. The Galactic Council patrol ships avoid this area too," added Engineer Isol from her station. "Everyone knows the Vorthaks attack anything that moves through here." Minho looked down at his controls. "I know, but we have enough power left for one transmission. We could send out our location and ship data. Maybe someone will hear it someday. And maybe someone will care enough to investigate," Nari said softly. She walked over to Minho's station and looked at the communication array. "Do it," Captain Do-hyun protested. "Even if someone picks up the signal, they won't come here. This is Vorthak territory. No one is crazy enough to start a fight with them over a bunch of strangers." Nari placed her hand on Minho's shoulder. "Send the signal anyway. Put in our ship specifications, crew numbers, and a simple message. Tell them we are scientists. Tell them we mean no harm. Tell them we need help." Minho's fingers moved over the controls. The distress beacon began to transmit, sending their cry for help into the vast emptiness between the stars. "Message sent, Captain," Minho reported, broadcasting on all emergency frequencies. "Good," Nari said. She knew it was probably useless. In all the history of space travel, she had never heard of anyone answering a distress call in Vorthak territory. But at least they had tried. At least they had reached out to the universe and asked for help. She walked to the captain's chair and sat down heavily. Around her, the bridge was getting colder by the minute. She could see ice forming on some of the control panels. "All crew members," she announced over the ship's internal communication system, "report to the main cargo bay. We'll stay together and share body heat. Bring all the blankets and thermal gear you can find." Her crew began moving through the ship, gathering in the largest open space they had. 30 Talians huddled together in the darkness, trying to keep each other warm. Some of them were already getting sick from the bad air. Others were too cold to stop shivering. Dr. Sunho, their chief medical officer, moved among them with his portable scanner. He was checking everyone for signs of hypothermia and oxygen poisoning. But there was little he could do without power for his medical equipment. "How are we doing, Doctor?" Nari asked. "Not well," Sunho replied honestly. "The young ones are handling it better, but some of the older crew members are already in trouble." We need heat and clean air soon, or we're going to start losing people. Nari looked around at her crew. These people had trusted her to bring them home safely. Now she was watching them slowly freeze to death in the darkness. "Captain," called Jiwoo, their youngest crew member. She was barely out of the academy, but she was brave and smart. "I'm still monitoring the communication channels. Should I keep listening?" "Yes," Nari said. "Keep listening until the power runs out completely." She knew no one would answer their call. The galaxy was full of different species, but they all had one thing in common. They looked out for themselves first. No one risked their own ships and crews to save strangers, especially not in Vorthak space. But she wanted to keep hope alive for as long as possible. Even if it was false hope, it was better than giving up completely. The hours passed slowly. The air got thinner and the cold got worse. Some of her crew members fell asleep and wouldn't wake up. Others sat quietly, thinking about the families they would never see again. Nari made one final log entry in the ship's computer, using the last bit of power in her personal device. "This is Captain Nari of the Talian research vessel Starweaver. We were attacked by Vorthak raiders while conducting a peaceful science mission. Our ship is dead and our crew is dying. We have sent a distress signal, but we do not expect anyone to answer it. If someone finds this log someday, please know that we tried to be good neighbors to all the species in the galaxy. We never wanted to hurt anyone. We just wanted to learn and explore and maybe make some friends among the stars." Commander Skreeth felt his lips pull back in a satisfied grin, showing rows of sharp teeth. His 3 destroyer ships had been patrolling this sector for weeks without finding anything interesting to hunt. Now his sensors were picking up a distress signal from a damaged alien vessel. The Vorthak commander stood over 8 feet tall, with thick gray scales covering his muscular body. Scars from old battles marked his face and arms. He had been fighting other species for most of his 40 years, and he was very good at it. "Report," Skreeth growled to his sensor operator. "Single ship, Commander. Talian design. No power signatures, no weapons. They're completely helpless." Skreeth's grin got wider. Talians were perfect prey. They were peaceful and weak, with no military to speak of. Their ships carried valuable science equipment that could be sold on the black market. And the Talians themselves made decent workers in the mining camps if you could keep them alive long enough. "Distance?" Skreeth asked. 4 hours at maximum speed, Commander." "Good, signal the other ships. Tell them we have easy prey waiting for us." The 3 Vorthak destroyers changed course toward the dying Starweaver. Each ship was heavily armed and built for war. They had thick armor plating and powerful weapons that could destroy most civilian vessels with a single shot. Against a helpless science ship, they were like wolves hunting a wounded deer. Skreeth walked to his command chair and settled his bulk into it. The bridge around him was dark and functional, designed for battle rather than comfort. His crew worked quietly at their stations, preparing weapons and boarding equipment. The Vorthaks had built their empire on a simple principle. The strong took what they wanted from the weak. Any species that couldn't defend itself deserved whatever happened to it. It was the natural way of things. "Commander," his communications officer reported. "We're intercepting the distress signal from the Talian ship. They're broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." "Let me hear it," Skreeth ordered. The bridge speakers crackled to life with the alien transmission. The universal translator converted the Talian words into Vorthak speech. "This is the research vessel Starweaver. We are 30 crew members in need of immediate assistance. Our ship has been damaged and our life support is failing. We are scientists conducting peaceful research. We mean no harm to anyone. Please help us." Several of Skreeth's crew members laughed at the pathetic message. The Talians sounded exactly like what they were. Weak, frightened prey begging for mercy. "Shall I prepare a response, Commander?" asked the communications officer. "Not yet. Let them suffer a while longer. Fear makes them more cooperative." Skreeth had raided dozens of ships over the years. He had learned that breaking the crew's spirit before boarding made everything easier. Let them sit in the dark and cold thinking about death. By the time his warriors came aboard, they would be grateful just to be allowed to live as slaves. The 3 Vorthak ships continued their approach, taking their time. There was no hurry. The Talians weren't going anywhere. On the bridge of the middle destroyer, Sub-Commander Vrath was planning the boarding operation. He was younger than Skreeth, but just as brutal. His job was to secure the alien ship and capture any survivors. "How many boarding pods do we need?" Vrath asked his team leaders. 2 should be enough," replied Sergeant Krosk. "It's just a science ship. 30 weak Talians won't give us much trouble." Don't underestimate them, Frath warned. Desperate prey can sometimes surprise you. But yes, 2 pods should handle it. Take stun weapons. Dead slaves are worthless. The boarding pods were small, armored vehicles designed to attach to enemy ships and cut through their hulls. Each pod carried 8 fully armed Vorthak warriors in combat armor. Against civilian scientists with no weapons, they would be unstoppable. Meanwhile, on the 3rd destroyer, the crew was already calculating the value of their prize. The ship's quartermaster was reviewing the technical data they had intercepted from the Talion distress signal. Science vessel, Talion design, probably 5 years old, he reported to his captain. The research equipment alone should bring a good price. And Talion computer systems are always in demand. What about the crew? The captain asked. 30 aliens, mostly scientists and technicians. The mining companies always need more workers. We should get a decent price for them at the slave markets. The captain nodded with satisfaction. This raid was going to be very profitable. The Vorthax would strip the Starweaver of everything valuable, then sell the crew to the mining camps on the outer planets. It was just business. The strong took from the weak. That was how the universe worked. As they got closer to their target, Screeth finally decided it was time to make contact. He wanted to see the fear in the aliens' voices when they realized their situation was hopeless. Open a channel to the Talion ship, he ordered. The communications officer worked his controls. Channel open, Commander. Screeth leaned forward in his command chair, his voice becoming a low, threatening growl. Attention, Talion vessel. This is Commander Screeth of the Vorthak Raiders. You are now our prisoners. Prepare to be boarded. Any resistance will result in the immediate execution of your entire crew. He waited for a response. Usually, alien crews would start begging for mercy at this point. Some would offer money or cargo in exchange for their lives. Others would just cry. But the Talion captain surprised him. Her voice came back clear and steady with no sign of panic. Commander Screeth, we are unarmed civilians conducting scientific research. We have nothing of military value. We ask that you allow us to send a message to our families before you do whatever you plan to do. Screeth was impressed despite himself. The alien female had courage, he would give her that. But courage wouldn't save her or her crew. You may send your messages, he replied. You have 1 hour before we board your ship. It was a small mercy, but Screeth wasn't completely without honor. He had no problem killing enemies in battle, but he preferred to give non-combatants a chance to say goodbye to their loved ones. The 3 Vorthak destroyers took up positions around the helpless Starweaver, like predators circling wounded prey. Screeth's crew prepared their boarding equipment and checked their weapons one final time. In 1 hour, the hunt would begin. Screeth settled back in his command chair and watched the stars. He had no idea that 30 light-years away, another fleet was already racing toward them at maximum speed. He had no idea that the Talion distress signal had been intercepted by alien sensors he had never heard of. He had no idea that for the first time in his long career of raiding and killing, he had picked the wrong prey. The hour was almost up. Soon his warriors would board the alien ship and claim their prize. It would be just another easy victory for the Vorthak raiders. At least that's what Screeth thought. Lieutenant Yunwu rubbed his tired eyes and took another sip of his coffee. The night shift at monitoring station Echo 7 was always quiet, but tonight seemed especially boring. He had been watching the deep space sensors for 6 hours without seeing anything more interesting than background radiation. The monitoring station floated in empty space, 50 light-years from Earth. Its job was to watch for dangerous asteroids, enemy ships, or anything else that might threaten human colonies. Most nights, Hyunwoo watched empty space and tried to stay awake. He was just thinking about taking another break when his sensors picked up something strange. A signal was coming from the outer edge of their detection range. At first he thought it might be interference from a solar storm, but the pattern looked too regular. Hyunwoo leaned forward and adjusted his controls. The signal became clearer. It definitely wasn't natural. Someone or something was transmitting a repeating message into space. What the hell? Hyunwoo muttered to himself. He ran the signal through the computer's analysis program. The results made him sit up straight in his chair. The signal contained mathematical patterns that were clearly artificial, but it wasn't coming from any human ship or station. Hyunwoo's hands shook slightly as he recorded the transmission. He had been trained for this possibility, but he never thought it would actually happen during his shift. This looked like the real thing. First contact with an alien species. He activated the emergency communication system and called his commanding officer, Commander Jamin, to the control room immediately. This is not a drill. Commander Jamin arrived 5 minutes later, still putting on his uniform jacket. He was a calm, experienced officer who had served in the Deep Space Fleet for 20 years. But Hyunwoo could see worry in his eyes. "What do you have, Lieutenant?" Jamin asked. "Unknown signal from grid reference 77 Alpha. It's definitely artificial and it's definitely not human." Hyunwoo played the recorded transmission. Commander Jamin listened carefully, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "How long has it been broadcasting?" "I picked it up 20 minutes ago. The signal strength suggests it started about 3 hours ago." Commander Jamin studied the sensor readings. "Distance?" "Approximately 50 light-years, sir. Near the edge of our detection range. Any idea what it says?" "I'm not sure, but the mathematical patterns suggest it might be some kind of distress call. There are repeating sequences that could be coordinates and technical specifications." Commander Jamin was quiet for a long moment. Then he activated his communication link to Earth Command. Priority 1 transmission to Earth Command. Request immediate conference with Admiral Soo-hyun. The response came back within minutes. Admiral Soo-hyun's face appeared on the main screen, looking alert despite the early hour on Earth. She was a tough woman in her 50s who had commanded Earth's space forces through several dangerous situations. "What's the situation, Commander?" she asked. "We've intercepted what appears to be an alien distress signal. Lieutenant Hyunwoo discovered it during routine monitoring operations." Admiral Soo-hyun's expression didn't change, but Hyunwoo could see her knuckles go white as she gripped her desk. "Send me everything you have," she ordered. The data transmission took several minutes. While they waited, Admiral Soo-hyun consulted with her staff on Earth. Finally, her face returned to the screen. "I'm sending Dr. Yoonji to your station immediately. She's our best xenolinguist. I want a full analysis of this signal within 12 hours. Dr. Yoonji arrived 6 hours later aboard a fast courier ship. She was a small, intense woman who had spent her career studying theoretical alien languages. Now she was faced with the real thing. She worked steadily for hours, running the alien signal through every analysis program Earth had developed. Slowly, patterns began to emerge from the mathematical sequences. "It's definitely a distress call," she announced finally. "I can identify coordinates, technical specifications for their ship, and what appears to be a crew count. 30 individuals requesting immediate assistance." Admiral Soo-hyun had returned to the station to oversee the analysis personally. She studied Dr. Yoonji's translation with growing concern. "How long ago was this transmitted?" "Based on the signal propagation, approximately 18 hours ago." "But Admiral, there's something else. The signal is coming from a region of space we've never explored. Our long-range surveys show at least 3 other species operating in that area." "Hostile species?" "Unknown. But based on the urgency of this distress call, I suspect the aliens who sent it are in immediate danger." Admiral Soo-hyun walked to the station's main view screen, which showed a tactical display of nearby star systems. The alien signal was coming from far beyond human space, in a region marked as unexplored on their charts. "What's our response capability?" she asked Commander Jamin. "We could have a fast scout ship there in 36 hours, but a single ship wouldn't be much help if they're under attack." "What about a full task force?" Commander Jamin consulted his tactical computer. "We could assemble most of our deep space fleet within 12 hours, but that would leave our outer colonies practically defenseless." Admiral Soo-hyun was quiet for a long time, staring at the star chart. The decision she was about to make would be the most important in human history. "Earth's first contact with alien life, and they were asking for help, ma'am," Dr. Yoonji said softly. "The mathematical patterns in their message suggest they're scientists, not warriors. They're specifically stating that they mean no harm to anyone. And they're dying," added Lieutenant Hyunwoo. "The signal is getting weaker. Their ship's power is failing." Admiral Soo-hyun made her choice. "Send orders to all Deep Space Fleet commanders. Every available ship is to rendezvous at Rally Point Tango 7 within 8 hours. We're going to answer this distress call." Commander Jamin looked worried. "Admiral, we don't know what we're flying into. This could be a trap, or we might be starting a war with species we know nothing about." "Maybe," Admiral Soo-hyun replied. "But someone is calling for help. And if we ignore that call, what does that say about who we are as a species?" She turned to face the assembled officers. "Earth has always believed that civilized beings help each other when they're in trouble. That's not going to change just because we're dealing with aliens. The orders went out across human space. From military bases and patrol stations, warships began converging on the rally point. The largest fleet Earth had ever assembled was preparing for humanity's first contact with alien life. It would be a rescue mission. Admiral Soo-hyun stood on the bridge of her flagship, the UES Indomitable, watching the other ships arrive. 47 vessels in total, from massive battleships to nimble destroyers. The pride of Earth's Space Force, ready to risk everything for strangers they had never met. All ships report ready for jump. Admiral, reported her navigation officer. Course laid in for the alien coordinates? Yes, ma'am. Jump will take us directly to their position. Admiral Soo-hyun looked one more time at the tactical display. They were about to enter unknown space, possibly hostile territory, to help aliens they knew nothing about. It was dangerous and possibly stupid. It was also the right thing to do. All ships, she announced over the fleet communication channel. This is Admiral Soo-hyun. Today we make history. Someone in the dark is calling for help and we're going to answer. Whatever we find out there, remember that we represent all of humanity. Make Earth proud. The fleet jumped to hyperspace, racing toward the alien distress signal at maximum speed. Commander Screeth watched impatiently as his boarding teams prepared their equipment. The hour was almost up, and soon his warriors would cut through the Talion ship's hull to claim their prize. The 3 Vorthak destroyers had surrounded the helpless Starweaver like hunters circling a wounded animal. Boarding pods ready. Commander, reported Sub-Commander Vrath. Good. Begin the... Screeth's words were cut off as his sensor operator suddenly shouted an alarm. Commander, multiple hyperspace signatures detected. Large ships dropping out of jump. Screeth spun toward the main display screen as space around them erupted in flashes of blue-white light. Ship after ship materialized out of hyperspace in perfect formation. First 5, then 10, then 20 massive vessels appeared in the darkness. What species? Screeth demanded, his voice tight with sudden worry. The sensor operator's hands flew over his controls, analyzing the new arrivals. Unknown design, Commander. I've never seen ships like these before. The lead vessel is enormous. It's bigger than a Vorthak battlecruiser. Screeth stared at the tactical display in growing disbelief. 47 alien warships had just appeared around his small force of raiders. The lead ship alone could probably destroy all 3 of his destroyers without working up a sweat. Energy signatures? He asked. Off the charts, Commander. These ships are carrying weapons that make our guns look like toys. The largest of the alien vessels moved closer, its hull gleaming with armor plating and weapon ports. Along its side, strange symbols spelled out UES Indomitable in letters Screeth couldn't read. Then the aliens transmitted a message on all frequencies. The universal translator converted their words into Vorthak speech, and the voice that came through the speakers was calm, but absolutely firm. Attention, unidentified vessels. You are interfering with a rescue operation. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. Screeth felt his blood run cold. These aliens had arrived to help the Talions. That was impossible. In all his years of raiding, no one had ever challenged the Vorthaks in their own territory. Other species were too smart to risk a fight over strangers. But here they were. An entire fleet of unknown warships heavily armed and ready for battle. Commander, his communications officer whispered, what are your orders? Screeth's warrior pride warred with his survival instincts. He had never backed down from a fight in his life, but he had also never faced odds this bad. 3 aging destroyers against 47 modern warships was not a battle. It was suicide. Still, he was Vorthak. He would not show weakness to aliens. Open a channel, he ordered. The main screen flickered, and Screeth found himself looking at the bridge of the alien flagship. The beings staring back at him were unlike anything he had ever seen. They stood upright like Vorthaks, but they were smaller and looked almost fragile. Their skin was pale and smooth, without scales or natural armor. But their eyes held a cold determination that made even Screeth nervous. The alien commander was a female with gray hair and hard features. She wore a dark blue uniform with strange symbols on the collar. When she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone used to being obeyed. This is Admiral Soo-hyun of the United Earth Fleet. You will stand down immediately and allow us to proceed with our rescue operation. Unknown vessels, Screeth replied, trying to keep his voice steady. You have entered Vorthak space. This ship is our lawful prize. Withdraw or be destroyed. The alien admiral's expression didn't change. Commander, You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and move away from that disabled vessel. This is not a request. Screeth looked at his tactical display. His 3 ships were completely surrounded. The alien fleet had positioned themselves with military precision, cutting off any escape route. But Vorthak honor demanded that he not give ground to inferior species. "We do not retreat," he growled. "If you want the Talians, you'll have to fight for them." Admiral Suhyun nodded calmly. So be it. The connection ended and Screeth immediately shouted orders to his crew. "All ships, battle stations. Target the lead vessel with everything we have." The 3 Vorthak destroyers opened fire simultaneously, their plasma cannons sending streams of deadly energy toward the human flagship. The weapons that had destroyed countless civilian ships struck the Indomitable's shields with thunderous impacts. The human ship didn't even slow down. "Direct hits on the enemy flagship," reported Screeth's weapons officer. "No effect. Their shields are holding." "Impossible," Screeth snarled. "Hit them again!" But before his ships could fire a second volley, the humans responded. The Indomitable's main gun spoke with a voice like thunder. Kinetic projectiles moving at incredible speed punched through Vorthak's shields as if they were paper. The first destroyer exploded in a ball of fire and debris. The second took a direct hit to its engine room and went spinning helplessly through space. Screeth's own ship shuddered as human weapons found their mark. "Shields down," his engineering officer reported. "Hull breaches on decks 4 and 7. Screeth watched in horror as smaller human ships swarmed around his remaining destroyer like angry insects. Their fighters moved with impossible speed and precision, targeting his weapon systems with surgical accuracy. In less than 5 minutes, the battle was over. 1 Vorthak ship destroyed, 1 crippled, and Screeth's flagship barely holding together. The human fleet had barely used a fraction of their firepower. "Damage report," Screeth whispered. "Weapons offline. Engines at 20%. Life support failing." Admiral Suhyun's face appeared on his screen again. This time her expression held no mercy. "Commander Screeth, your ships are disabled. You have 2 choices. Surrender immediately or be destroyed where you sit. You have 10 seconds to decide." Screeth looked around his ruined bridge. Half his crew was dead or wounded. His weapons were gone. His engines were barely functioning. If he tried to continue fighting, these humans would blow his ship to pieces without breaking a sweat. For the first time in his life, Commander Screeth gave the order to surrender. We yield," he said, the words tasting like poison in his mouth. "Smart choice," Admiral Suhyun replied. "You will remain in position while we complete our rescue operation. Any attempt to move or transmit messages will result in your immediate destruction." The human fleet ignored the defeated Vorthaks and moved toward the dying Talian ship. Screeth watched in amazement as the aliens organized a massive rescue effort. Medical ships, engineering vessels, and supply craft converged on the Starweaver with military efficiency. "Who are these humans?" he asked his sensor operator. "Unknown, Commander. I've never heard of them before. But their technology is at least 50 years ahead of ours." Screeth stared at the human fleet surrounding his broken ships. In his entire career as a raider, he had never seen such overwhelming force used for a rescue mission. Most species would send 1 or 2 ships to help a disabled vessel. The humans had brought an entire fleet. Why? He wondered aloud. Why would they risk so much for strangers? He would never understand the answer. The concept of helping others without expectation of reward was completely alien to the Vorthak way of thinking. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Admiral Suhyun watched her rescue ships work. The Talian vessel was in bad shape, but her crews were already stabilizing their life support and preparing to evacuate the survivors. "Admiral," her communications officer reported, "Captain Taehyun requests permission to board the alien vessel." "Permission granted. Tell him to be careful. We don't know what we're dealing with yet." "Yes, ma'am." Admiral Suhyun looked at the tactical display where the remains of the Vorthak force sat under the guns of her fleet. The battle had lasted less than 5 minutes. She almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Anyone who preyed on helpless civilians deserved whatever they got, and anyone who tried to stop a rescue mission would face the full might of the United Earth Fleet. The humans had come to save lives, and nothing was going to stop them. Captain Taehyun checked his environmental suit one more time before stepping into the airlock. He had trained for many situations during his career in the Earth Fleet, but first contact with an alien species had never been one of them. Now he was about to board a ship full of dying aliens and somehow help them survive. "All systems green, Captain," reported Chief Medical Officer Dr. Yuna over the communication link. She was leading a team of medics and engineers aboard the rescue ship UES Mercy. "We're ready to begin the evacuation." Through the airlock window, Taehyun could see the Talion ship Starweaver connected to his vessel by an emergency docking tube. The alien ship looked dead. No lights, no power signatures, no signs of life except for the faint heat traces their sensors were picking up from inside. "Remember," Dr. Yuna continued, "we have no idea what these aliens look like or what they might need to survive. Be ready for anything." The airlock cycled open, and Taehyun led his team into the Talion vessel. The first thing that hit him was the cold. Their breath made clouds in the freezing air as they moved through dark corridors lit only by their portable lights. "Temperature is -15 degrees, reported Engineer Kiwan. "Atmosphere is thin but still breathable for humans. These aliens need similar conditions to what we're used to." They followed the ship's layout toward what their scans indicated was the main cargo bay. That's where the life signs were concentrated. As they got closer, Taehyun could hear voices speaking in a language his universal translator couldn't recognize yet. "Hello?" he called out as they approached the cargo bay entrance. "We're here to help. Can you understand us?" The voices inside stopped. Then a female voice answered in heavily accented but understandable English. We can understand you. Are you real, or are we dreaming from the cold?" Taehyun smiled inside his helmet. The aliens had obviously picked up human languages from their communications. "We're real. My name is Captain Taehyun of the Earth vessel Mercy. We received your distress signal and came to help." The cargo bay doors opened, and Taehyun got his first look at the Talions. He had to stop and stare. They were beautiful. Tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to glow with an inner light. Their eyes were larger than human eyes, and they had a graceful, almost ethereal quality that reminded him of angels from old Earth paintings. 30 aliens huddled together, in the center of the bay, wrapped in blankets and thermal gear. Some were unconscious, others were too weak to stand. But their leader, a female who had to be their captain, stepped forward to greet the human rescue team. "I am Captain Nari," she said, her voice shaking from cold and exhaustion. We never thought anyone would come. We're here now," Taehyun replied. "We're going to get you all to safety." Dr. Yuna immediately went to work, checking the aliens with her medical scanner. The device was designed for humans, but it could still detect basic life signs and health problems. "Severe hypothermia in most of them," she reported. "Several cases of oxygen deprivation. 2 unconscious patients who need immediate attention." She began setting up portable heaters and emergency medical equipment. Working alongside her was a Talion who introduced himself as Dr. Sunho, their chief medical officer. Despite the language barrier, the 2 doctors quickly figured out how to work together. Dr. Yuna showed Dr. Sunho how to use human thermal blankets and oxygen masks. Dr. Sunho explained which of his crew members needed the most help. Within minutes, they had organized a joint medical effort that was saving lives. "This is incredible," Engineer Kiwan whispered to Taehyun. "They're working together like they've known each other for years." Taehyun watched the 2 medical teams with amazement, humans and aliens meeting for the first time, united by their desire to preserve life. It was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "Captain Nari," he said, "we need to evacuate your crew to our medical facilities. Our doctors can treat hypothermia and oxygen poisoning much better than we can do here." Captain Nari nodded gratefully. "We trust you completely. Please save my people." The evacuation began immediately. Human medical teams carefully moved the sickest Talions to the rescue ship's medical bay. Others who were strong enough to walk were given thermal suits and escorted to heated compartments. Throughout the process, Taehyun was amazed by how similar the 2 species were. The Talions were obviously more fragile than humans, and they seemed to think and move more slowly. But they were clearly intelligent, compassionate beings who cared deeply about each other. "Captain," one of the younger Talions said to him as she was being helped to safety, "why did you come? We are strangers to you." Taehyun thought about how to answer that question. "Because you asked for help," he said simply. And decent people help each other when they're in trouble. The young alien stared at him with her large, expressive eyes. Even strangers? Especially strangers. As the last of the Tylian crew was evacuated to safety, Captain Nari lingered in the cargo bay with Taehyun. She looked around at the ship that had been her home and workplace for so many years. "We were scientists," she said sadly. "Explorers. We never hurt anyone. We just wanted to study the stars and learn about the universe." "What happened to you?" Taehyun asked. "Vorthak raiders attacked us without warning. They destroyed our engines and left us to die. Then they came back to take us as slaves." Taehyun felt anger rise in his chest. "Those ships that were surrounding you when we arrived?" "Yes. The Vorthaks are a warrior species. They believe that might makes right. The strong take from the weak, and the weak deserve whatever happens to them." "Well," Taehyun said grimly, "they just learned that there are stronger species in the galaxy." Captain Nari looked confused. "I don't understand." "Admiral Suhyun destroyed their ships in less than 5 minutes. The Vorthaks who attacked you are now sitting helpless under the guns of our fleet." Captain Nari's eyes went wide. "You fought them? For us?" "Someone was hurting innocent people. We stopped them. They walked together toward the docking tube that would take them to the human rescue ship. Behind them, the Starweaver sat dark and cold, a monument to the cruelty that existed in the galaxy. But ahead of them, the UES Mercy was warm and bright, full of humans and Talians working together to heal the wounded and comfort the survivors. "Captain Taehyun," Nari said as they reached the airlock, "I must ask you something that may sound strange." "Go ahead. Why did your people risk so much to save strangers? You brought an entire fleet into enemy territory for aliens you had never met. Why?" Taehyun stopped and looked at her seriously. "Because that's who we are. When someone calls for help, we answer. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, friend or stranger. If someone is in trouble and we can help them, we will. Even if it means risking your own lives? Especially then." Captain Nari was quiet for a long moment. Then she placed her hand on Taehyun's arm, the first physical contact between their species. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for showing us that there is still goodness in the universe." 2 hours later, all 30 Talian crew members were safe aboard human medical ships. The most seriously injured were in intensive care, but Dr. Yuna reported that everyone would make a full recovery. Captain Nari sat in the observation lounge of the Mercy, watching the human fleet through the large windows. 47 warships floated in perfect formation, their running lights twinkling like stars. They had come all this way to save her and her crew, asking for nothing in return. "Captain," Dr. Sunho joined her at the window. "The human doctors say our crew will be fine. They have medical technology we've never seen before." "Good," Nari replied. "Sunho, have you ever heard of humans before today?" "Never. They're completely unknown to galactic civilization, but they're clearly more advanced than most of the species in the Council. And they used all that power to rescue strangers. They watched in comfortable silence as human technicians worked to repair the Starweaver. Even though the ship was badly damaged, the humans were trying to fix it anyway." "They're remarkable people," Dr. Sunho said finally. "Yes," Captain Nari agreed. "They are." She made a mental note to recommend that the Galactic Council extend an immediate invitation to Earth for membership. The universe needed more species like humanity, species that answered distress calls no matter who sent them.